At the beginning of 2026, we surveyed executive pastors like you, and nearly 1 in 4 named that staff health and structure, how we get our teams to work together, was your top fear going into 2026. You know, and I know it. You probably have an open role at your church that you're trying to fill, or you're maybe about to have an open role when a key person leaves your team and your instinct is just to post it. What can we do? Finding, releasing, equipping leadership is critically important. Welcome to the last compilation episode of summer 2026 here on the Unseminary podcast. Super excited about today's conversation, all about developing leaders within our organizations. I know that in many churches, we think of this as a season where new staff are hiring, or we're hiring them into new roles. We're working on budget planning for next year. There's all the fall ramp up. All 4 of these conversations are going to be helpful for you. The first one, we've got Tim Foote. He is the CEO of Slingshot, has nearly 30 years in ministry leadership, and his team has literally worked with thousands of churches on staffing. Listen to this kickoff to today's conversation, really setting up the tension that we find ourselves in. He names the leadership model that most of us have absorbed without anyone talking about it out loud, and it could be derailing your church and my church. Let's listen in to what Tim has to say about developing leaders.
Yeah, I mean, the model we see is hero-driven leadership. It's when we rely too much on individuals to actually carry the mission. And I think the cracks have happened. I mean, we've seen it, Rich. You and I are similar ages. I think the cracks are happening generationally. The builders and boomers were wired differently for a different time and culture. And us Gen Xers, we can code switch. I mean, we see that happening all the time. And as we stepped into leadership, the cracks started to appear. I mean, we see it every week. Another leader burning out, doing stupid things because of too much pressure. Then millennials and Gen Z are now leading in a new way that we need to embrace. And so I think we're seeing those cracks around that hero dependence, and we're starting to see the need more than ever to have a team awareness, a holistic approach, or we're just going to have leaders continue to burn out. And we see it around unrealistic hiring expectations, lack of support for great leaders when they're hired, a lack of development. Hero dependence is a terrible staffing and growth strategy, and becomes a massive trap when it comes to a number of the key focus areas or patterns we've seen that healthy teams focus on and move mission forward.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. I heard you say that once, and it literally, I sat up and I was like, oh man, I've seen that in my own hiring. I've seen that in the way I've talked with, I see the leaders around me. You see these people who they've kind of built the entire ministry around themselves, and it's like, it doesn't work if they don't, it's like they're such a unique individual. They have to lift it all. But what makes that model so sticky? Like, why do we keep coming back to that? Why, even if we know, like, intellectually in our heads, yeah, that's not a good idea, it feels like we just keep coming back to this same thing time. In fact, we actually reward it. We'll be like, wow, isn't that great? This person's amazing. And we just kind of keep moving on. Why is that?
It's the shiny object trap. I mean, the shiny object, aka the talented leader that we think is going to catapult the ministry. Often we see it in hiring conversations when a particular organization wants to go after somebody that's been at a much bigger organization than them, and often that person, if they can attract them, will come in with a playbook that isn't uniquely suited to the organization they're stepping into. Or there aren't systems to support that new leader and the growth that's going to happen, and burnout happens at every level. But we both know, Rich, busy work makes us feel productive. But is it the right work? And we know that we can be ourselves the shiny object. We want to. It feels good to be the hero. It feels good to be the
Mhm.
one that's solving problems. It feels good to
Sure.
be the one that has all the answers. And I
Right.
think that's one of the biggest threats in healthy leadership today is feeling like you have to have all the answers. Because I think one of the most powerful statements from healthy leaders and healthy teams is, hey, we don't know what to do next. Because it
Mhm.
actually opens up the room for new thought. It opens up the room for collaboration, and it opens up the room for teamwork. But it's
Mhm.
easier to move quick. It's easier to move quick and be
So
surrounded by
true.
people who agree and play it safe. And then down the
Mhm.
road, we realize that we weren't growing in every sense of that word, and the mission was stalled out. We know we often have to slow down, re strategize, look at who's around the table, work out how we work together to move faster in the long term. We have to be vulnerable to make a team work, and sometimes it requires us to
Mm.
actually help others win than focus on heroes. I mean, you think about a winning
Mm.
sports team. It's not about just one person out there doing all the work. We've got to work together as
No.
a team.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
it's how do we work together and have less dependence on that shiny object, those standout leaders or those heroes.
Oh, so good. Tim named something there. Man, it feels good to be the person with all the answers. Can I have a little confessional time with you, friends? In earlier parts in my ministry career, I have really struggled with that. I wanted to be the person who had all the answers, but it's a trap. And most of us find ourselves in it. We've got to move beyond hero dependence, either wanting to be the hero or to find heroes. It's not a character flaw. It's a system that ultimately rewards the wrong thing. So the question that I have is, what is the alternative? Where do we go? If we're not just trying to hire the next shiny object, the person that will, plug in like a thing. Where do leaders actually come from? I love this conversation coming up with Spence Shelton. He's the lead pastor of Mercy Church in Charlotte, planted in 2015, now 3 campuses online, plus launching a family of churches. I want you to listen for a few things. First of all, Spence makes a parallel that I really have not heard many people say between how we think about reaching people who are far from God and how we think about finding leaders and how these two are connected. Listen carefully for the shoulder tap that he talks about. Oftentimes, one of the things I find most revealing about podcast interviews is people say things just in asides that really do give you a sense of what's actually going on under the hood. And pay attention to where his executive pastor, campus pastors come from. Let's listen in to what Spence Shelton has to say.
I think that mentality starts all the way down to the idea of reaching people that don't know Christ versus just sheep swapping from one church to the other church, right? So you can grow your church by transfer growth, which I actually am one who, hey man, if somebody's on the sideline in one church and then they plug into your church, I'm all for it. And if the same thing happens with Mercy, all for it. But our aim, what we all know as pastors and ministry leaders, is our aim is, man, let's reach lost people and then disciple them, right?
Yes.
The same thing I think should be true with leadership development. For some reason, when it comes then to developing leaders, we tend to go a different direction and think, well, let's just go find where some leaders are and get them to plug in. It's like, we don't do that even with discipleship. Why are we switching our mindset? And so I want to just kind of, I was convicted and wanted to call our church, and I would call others to the same mindset that you have with discipleship. Let that carry over into your leadership and your leadership development as well. And I think that's how we're going to grow, just as how we're going to grow the kingdom by reaching lost people, how we're going to grow the leaders in the kingdom, the number of leaders we have, it's going to be developing them in our church. And I don't know that we're even thinking that way and asking the question, is the guy who's a 27-year-old physical therapist in my church, has anybody ever bothered to tap him on the shoulder and ask, hey man,
That's
could
good.
God be calling you into ministry? Because I watch you, and no, we're not doing the shoulder tap, man. And so right now, I love it. Just a little bit of the story of our church. Both of our executive pastors and 2 of our 3 campus pastors were all in the marketplace. One of our executive pastors was in banking. Another was a plant manager. We have 2 campus pastors who were both, I use physical therapists because they're both former physical therapists. And, we're sitting there having these conversations. You know what makes a great pastor is someone who has sat with person after person, told them, hey, you should do this to feel better. And then they come back to you later and say, hey, I don't feel better. And you say, did you do the thing I told you to do? And they say, no. And you say, well, you should have done that. And a patient, long-suffering physical therapist turns out to be a great pastor, but somebody's got to tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, man, I think God might be calling you into this. And so my encouragement to anybody who's in ministry right now, kind of in that leadership development role, and you're like, I don't know, we're going to have to go outside to find some talent. I promise it's going to take longer the way I'm talking about. But if you will seek the Lord, ask the Lord, and then start shoulder tapping and giving some opportunities for guys to lead, for men and women to lead there in your ministry and whatever the leadership roles might be, I think there might be more people in there than you realize, because I believe that God provides for the church that he's growing, that he's called you to lead. And so I think the same thing's true with leaders as well.
Hey friends, 9 out of 10 campus pastors, they do come from within. So if you are launching new locations in the future, man, we got to start developing campus pastors today. But I know some of you are saying, listen. Yeah. That all sounds good. Shoulder tapping. Great. But how? How do I do it? How do I train my team to do it? How do we motivate, stay focused on this? The gap that what I have found, it's not desire. It's not even understand that people don't understand that that's how we do it. It's not resistance to those things. It's none of that. It's just that nobody owns it, because you see, development is everyone's job, which means that it's nobody's job. It's easy for this to fall through the cracks. Aren't we all supposed to be developing leaders? So if we're all developing leaders, my experience has been that means that really none of us are, or we're not doing it in a systematic way. Super excited to have Chris Vaught with us. He is the lead pastor of Connection Point Church in Missouri. Listen, it grew from 300 people in 2011 to 2,500 today across multiple campuses. And he outlines one challenge that Chris gave every staff member. And I really want you to listen carefully for this, because to be honest, this is pure unseminary magic. This is like what I love about our podcast. You could take this out of this interview today and put it into your next team meeting on Monday, apply it to your church. Listen in for what Chris wants to say to you about how we train people to shoulder tap, find leaders, and release them.
You can only hire out so much, right? Because even though our church has grown fast, budget always comes up last. So you have to look at other avenues other than just, I'll hire another position. So we started looking in the congregation, and we began to develop our own leadership pathway or pipeline to develop not only volunteers, but our future staff. We knew if we grew really fast, we need to hire from within, but we still couldn't hire every position. So we started looking at our volunteers as almost as non-paid staff positions. And so creating an atmosphere of expectation of roles and responsibilities, and also the value of what they're doing, that the kingdom is dependent upon all of us using our gifts and talents. And so we started this pathway, and at first it was simply a challenge to every staff member. You go find your Timothy. You go find one other person that you can invest yourself into, a volunteer, so that if on Saturday night, and here was kind of the criteria for us, if on Saturday night something were to happen and you catch COVID, okay, we're at that time period. Yes. Could this ministry run the next day because of the person you have personally equipped?
I love that clarity.
To hold the ministry.
Yeah, that's so good.
So we began putting those little pieces together.
That's right. You go ahead. I cut you off there. That's so
No. So I was just saying that's what we began. We began this pipeline, and that was really the basic level at first. Every staff member finding that one Timothy, if you will, if you want to use that terminology, that could run that ministry if you were out.
See what I told you? The Saturday night test is literally the cheapest leadership development tool in this entire episode. If you do nothing else out of today's episode, do that. But I know, listen, there can be a gap on that, a ceiling. Finding your Timothy fills gaps, but it does not produce people necessarily kind of week in, week out that you could put on payroll. You need to also do some development. You need to have some intentional leadership development. Most churches, again, think that they're developing leaders, but they're really just handing out books or running a monthly team meeting, that sort of thing. I want to reintroduce you to my friend Dave Miller. He's a former worship and creative arts pastor in Las Vegas, in Kentucky, in Michigan. And he and his team have worked with over 150 churches and over 160 residents. What do we mean by residents? These are people that are in the pipeline for thinking clearly in their lives about joining your staff team or staff teams of another church somewhere across the country. He defines 7 ingredients. Listen, I had the honor of writing the foreword to Dave's book, Who's the Next You? I would highly recommend you pick up a copy of that and think through that. But let's listen in a little bit of what Dave has to say today.
Well, we would say there's 7 ingredients. There's a chapter in the book, 7 ingredients. You can get it on our website right now. 7 ingredients of what we would say is leadership development. So what you're talking about, really, a sermon is training. If you think about it, like in a market sense, I'm going to talk at you for 35 minutes. There's 4 points. It's very good. It's inspired. Yep. It's like TED, long TED talk every 52 times a year, plus Christmas Eve and whatever. And I would just say we call that training. Yep. Churches for a long time have done really, really well with training, right? It's either it's the sermon or it's Sunday school. It's even the AI delivered small group questions I get from my men's group, right?
Yes.
It is staff. When I say, do y'all do leadership development? Yeah. Tell me about that. And they start talking about your book or Carrie's book or Craig Rochelle's book. It's a book of the month. It's a conversation even. Now we've taken training and we're still delivering the content, but we're discussing it and we're filling in blanks, right? And we do this.
Yep.
Or spiritual formation. I had a well-known keynote kind of person. We just need to disciple these kids and get out of their way. And I was like, oh, neat. Actually, we don't.
Yeah.
We did that once. It's called the Jesus movement. I think that was the Jesus movement or the Jesus people in the early 70s, which kind of mirrors what's going on college campuses, if you think about it. We don't need to just disciple them and get it. We got to go with them. So training, spiritual formation, soft skills, which is the pain point of all the bosses, the emotional lack of intelligence of things. Those would be the 3 core ones. And then we have to provide best practices. We have to provide ownership, which is a big thing for us in our small business, small church world at the 12-month mark when we're saying, well, she just doesn't get it. She doesn't get, what doesn't she get? He just doesn't understand. We talk about our downline people as if they're executive leaders with 20 years of experience. It would be totally fine for someone to accuse me of something like that. But like when we think of sports, we don't talk about individual players. We talk about the coaches. When the team's losing, whose fault is it? As a lifetime Cincinnati Reds fan, we changed the manager. We don't talk about number 78 and 14.
Right.
When the team's doing amazing, it's about the player. He's killing it. She's killing it. He's killing it. When the team is losing, we have to own it similarly. This is on us.
Wow.
This would be the cliche.
Wow.
Mental wellness. One of the 7 things, mental wellness. If you can't prove to me that you know, I'm not here giving you even a theological construct because we work with all sorts of churches that believe all sorts of things, right? But mental health, if you can't prove to me that you have a plan at least, or you've thought about it, that's going to be a problem. We're checking in on it. And then finally, developmental conversations. This is not delivered only through training, to your point.
What a fantastic group of conversations. Just a thin slice of so many of the conversations we've had over the last year in this whole area. Tim, he named the model that can keep your and my bench empty. Spence gave us the mindset shift and the shoulder tap. Chris gave us the simplest form, the really first move that cost you absolutely nothing. And Dave finally gave you the formal structure that produces people you could hire, put on your team long-term. Listen, you do not need to start at the top. Most churches never start at all because they only think the real option is just going out and hiring people externally. Listen, the question I want to leave you with is where Tim started us at the beginning. Maybe, dear listener, you are listening in today and you have the hero mindset. Maybe you need to start with you and figure out what you can do in your area to pass it all along. Listen, we've got links for all these 4 episodes in the show notes. Here at Unseminary, we're on a mission to help 100 churches grow by 1,000 people. We do that through these free podcasts, courses, coaching, cohorts. We do a lot to try to get in your corner. We've got so much coming up this fall. Stay tuned. Some great stuff coming your way to see your church be more effective. Thanks so much, friends. Take care.